Hello, hello friends. Let me just adjust something here. Yeah, so yeah, I hope you are having a good Saturday pandemic day. And so first of all, this is not a guided meditation or any type of inquiry or processing. The intention behind this video is to have an exploratory philosophical dialogue with a good friend of mine that I will introduce in a moment. So the topic of this exploratory philosophical dialogue is the title we came up that inspired us both was The Anatomy of the Romantic Illusion. Yeah. So the focus will be, we are interested to explore basically this area of love, relationships, with the underlying attachment, subconscious wants and needs, many of them we are not aware of, that drive our seeking of a partner and seeking of some promise of ultimate happiness. So we are interested to explore this. Also, this is not so much like a relationship counseling advice or tips how to get the one you love or meet the life partner. It's not like that. It's more like an exploration of illusions we may have. I personally identified lately, I had a lot of illusions and conditioning and programs about this. They were running me and sabotaging relationships. So exploring these ones, bring them to the light, exploring distortions that we inherited from our parents, from culture, from Disney, from whatever. Also, the context of this exploration of relationship or romantic or different types of love, it's also from the context of us being on a spiritual path, or some other term being a truth seeker or truth lover. In particular, with these paths connected to awareness, presence, self-inquiry, non-duality. So I will keep this framework in mind. Also, I would like to mention that both myself and my interlocutor, we happen to wear during the day the psychotherapist hat. So I don't necessarily want to go into psychotherapy and all that, but there's a, that's on the table. So yeah, so at this point I would like to introduce my interlocutor, a partner for this exploration, which is Amata. And I'm really grateful to have you here and to bounce ideas with you. And I know Amata for a bunch of years, and I'm grateful to call you wonderful friend and ally dealing with life, and colleague on the path of awakening, healing. As well as I must say that I was lucky and I enjoyed being colleague with you in different mental health settings. So we did work for years with severely emotionally disturbed youth at risk. And I might say all of them, most of those cases they end up like that because of some dysfunctional love that they are exposed to. We also both worked in a setting, doing groups or one-on-one with people who came out of prison, people on parole, who are labeled as sex offenders. And it's obvious that that's also connected to some dysfunctional love of sorts. And also we you know, we continue to have experience and work actively with couples and kids, teenagers, adults, and often this topic of relationship and misery in relationship, it's, I would say, #1 cause of turmoil. Also, we both had relationships and we suffered. And so we have experience with how it doesn't fucking work.
Correct,
So
my
I
friend.
would like to introduce Amata, and just anything you want to share to our unknown virtual friendly audience. We'll take it from here.
All right. Good afternoon, I guess, at this point, everybody. And hi, Mihai. It's nice to be here with you. I am Amata Albero. And as Mihai said, we have been very, very special friends for many years, and colleagues and spiritual allies. Done a lot of work of all kinds together, you and I, you know, from a very personal level to a very professional, spiritual level as well. And it's funny to have this conversation like this today, because this is what we do all the time.
Yeah.
We do this all the time. We've been doing this since we met, and I have deep appreciation for the journey of these many years. I also have to say that a lot of my growth and expansion of horizontal beliefs and you know, really spiritual growth as well, in the understanding this awareness and presence and consciousness. I owe it to you a lot. I also definitely I think you've offered me many beautiful gifts that I treasure. So to have this conversation with you today, it's an honor and a gift for me as we continue ping-ponging and bouncing off ideas on how to navigate being and love.
Thank you for the kind words. And also I must say that I mean, I felt like for a lot of my life I was totally in some illusion about these things and running some programs, some adaptations in the topic of, in the subject, the experience of relationships, intimate relationships. And so I was happily, unknowingly running some strategic adaptations from childhood, which were from one angle meant to create some kind of safety for Mihai. At the same time, they were severely limiting real intimacy. So basically, I was often managing closeness, not wanting to be too close, while deeply still pursuing the Walt Disney model of the one, you know?
Yeah.
So that's I think we can start here, you know? There's some very deeply ingrained conditioning that we inherit. We are steeped in it, and it's very hard to be aware of this program. And in my own words, it's like that. Basically, I'm incomplete. I'm incomplete as a man and feeling lack, some existential lack that I'm not aware of. And then there's this deep drive towards seeking the one. The one is the woman, or, you know, man, depending on your preference, that once I find, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be so wonderful, and it's going to be forever blissful, and
all the time.
all the time, forever blissful. I think that's what started our conversation, that I became aware that deep down there's this, oh, what we subconsciously seek from the sense of separate me, to find this one. So we have this experience of ultimate perfect union all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually, the program, the conditioning is that I'm going to find this and have that, and then the misunderstanding is that this will solve all my problems. And now I will feel finally I have arrived at happiness, I have arrived at contentment, and now finally it's going to be okay, you know. And this is, as long as this is running, this is my, you know, my experience with myself and with many people, and my best understanding at the moment. As long as this program is running, this will undermine real love, real intimacy. Is going to undermine over and over again. I hope.
Yes, I think that we share that same understanding, right? And we've talked about this many times. This idea of the one, the promised one, the chosen one, the one that will complete us, the one that is never the one, the one that is never the one we are with.
Yes.
In some way, right? Like,
right.
It feels for a moment is the one, and then shit start coming up, and that doesn't look like the one anymore. So there must be another one somewhere. And so there where we start kind of like considering that probably we're not with the right one, and we are starting to doubt. And as soon as the doubt comes in, we are half-hearted. We're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And a lot of, as you were saying, strategies for safety starts to kick in, right?
Yeah, right. So it seems like we are, you know, my teacher, I got a lot of good advice on it. I'm trying to apply the best I can. But Francis Lucille, he said, basically, as long as we come from this program, the assumption is that, yeah, I meet the one and it's going to solve all my problems, and there's this promise of happiness, and then we meet someone with whom we have a nice level of connection, polarity, you know, all kind of connections, and it seems that it's happening. That's it's like, oh yes, you know, it's like it's the honeymoon phase, which can last between a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, maybe maximum a few months. And then basically the placebo effect starts to wear off. And then the one or both people realize, like, oh shit, you know, it's not, I didn't get it. I didn't get what the promise offered. And now I realize I have the same problem, basically the same problem I had before, incomplete, dissatisfied, lack. Is now I have twice the problem. We have two problems. You know, we both have problems we brought before, and now we still have them there. And then instead of doubting conditioning or doubting the concept of the one, as you said, we doubt the person. Oh, she's not the one, you know. But we keep the intact symbol, you know.
That one is there somewhere. Ooh.
Yeah. Huh. So Amata, I'm curious, from your, you know, you are mother, we are not kids anymore, you know, and you had experiences, and so looking back, can you share on your memories or insights on how this was formed in you, or how this was operating, and you know, your path of running the program or starting to question the program? You know, I'm curious if you can share a little bit about it.
Oh, you want to really put me on the spot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can. Actually, it is funny you asked me that, because right when we were starting, I was thinking, okay, when this started in me? And I have a very amazing memories. I have memories that go back to when I was 1.5, 2 years old, where I remember this was seated in me, this idea or this feeling as an experience of longing for a counterpart that would complete me. I was already a romantic, hopeless and helpless romantic at 2 years old. When I fell in love desperately with this cartoon character that I was convinced was my one, and that one day we would be united, right? Very cute.
Wow.
I could share lots of stories around that, but I think that that's when it started. And I want to say that it starts actually like a true somatic experience. If I look at my experience, it does start like in the body, and then eventually got conceptualized through different kind of conditionings and beliefs, as you said, Disney, poetry, literature that inspires this idea of the promised one, or the one we are tragically separated from, or the one that we have to reunite with, right? That longing to reunite with that one, as if somehow it was lost at some point, and we constantly seek for him or her. So, you know, I can say that, first of all, I've had a very long list of very long-term relationships. Probably I've had more long-term relationships than dating in my life. So I have explored this concept of the one in so many flavors and with different combinations. And always coming to that place in every relationship that I had in the past, where very soon, sooner than later, even the most passionate love or infatuation that I experienced, at some point, the spell got broken. Like there was no more spell, right? And so there was that feeling like this is not the one, and I gotta keep searching. And I guess that maybe a little bit because of the profession we chose, and so the kind of learning curves that have been in place in the last decade, as well as certainly spiritual path, medicine work, insights, realizations around what is this oneness that we're looking for, or that we feel separated from, right? So change started to change a bit, and I also started to consider, I think about, I would say 8-9 years ago, that the common denominator in all these relationships that were falling apart with a large number, like very diversity, you know, in partnership, I was the common denominator. And so there was something that needed to start, you know, I needed to start looking here rather than there. So when that inquiry started in here, this belief around the one started to be explored with a little bit of like, is this a real story here that I'm looking for? And I gotta say, I confess, I am very attached to that story. You know, in my body, I feel that longing, and that story, I notice sometimes it's not a story that I want to let go of, you know.
The story of that existing of this one that will be like absolutely yummy and completeness.
Yeah, and of course for me
fulfillment.
it has changed flavor. Like I don't necessarily think of that one anymore as the one that will make me happy or will complete me, but that one with whom I can explore this duality in a whole way, like in a way that is whole, like not splitting or yes, I get the sex and it's great, but I don't get the emotional connection. Or, oh, I get the emotional connection, but the sex is awful. Or, oh, we are great at teamwork, but we have different political views or philosophical ideas about life. And, you know, it's like the idea of the one at some point for me changed as I, I, I wish there is that one with whom I can experience all levels of life
Mm-hmm.
and feel the fulfillment together.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder, is that also a story? Is it possible to really have that level of ultimate connection with one human being?
Is it possible to have this ultimate connection with one human being? And so ultimate meaning that all these aspects, all these realms, like let's say sexual yumminess and emotional intimacy and love
Spiritual connection.
and mental, it's nice to talk to them, to get into it spiritually on the same kind of wavelength and helping each other, inspiring each other. And also it's a great team, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great team, like on a ship, you know, you have a shipmate navigating the ocean of life. Hey, I must say, although I feel I have deleted and eradicated gradually, it took a long time, some of this old conditioning. Somehow, yeah, I find it that it's replaced, or my current understanding is that it is actually possible and it is allowed, it is available, so I can allow myself to experience life and to have this, what we just described. Somehow it is available, it is possible, it is natural, it is somehow in the flow of the Tao, you know, and how nature works. But, you know, from the deep understanding that, hey, I am responsible for my own sense of happiness and fulfillment. And actually, I have a deep experiential understanding and conviction that uh, what we are, what I am is not the body or the psychological Mihai, but what I am as that which is aware, what I am as presence is already whole and complete. It doesn't need any woman, you know, at the level of consciousness, already whole and complete. And so, and this is more felt, so I can see that the sense of lack and the sense of desperation is diminished a lot. This being said, I want to bring this, honor this, that there are, you know, multiple levels of identity within each other, you know, so it's the level of ultimate identity as that which is aware, which is from one angle God's God, or whatever, the Tao source, being aware through this Mihai-ness. At the same time, you know, there's like a human body and human male species, and in the hard wiring of the human species is that mate, family, for thousands and thousands of years, it works better. It seems like how it was set up here, to have a partner, you know, it to enjoy, celebrate, make life easier, you know. might still be an illusion, but it somehow feels like it's feels much more wise and more aligned with truth and with nature and with the wisdom of our true nature.
Yeah, sounds like a more fluid type of illusion, less less cemented or solidified to a point that you know, it breaks you. But this one that we just named as a more fluid illusion or more functional, it's where we are, I guess. I mean, we are aware, right, of this consciousness level that you're talking about. In many, we experience that consciousness level in certain moments of ecstasy and bliss, or meditation, medicine work, prayer, devotion, whatever that is that we do to feel in that space of awareness. And from that place, you know, there is that absolute unconditional love, acceptance that comes in a minute, an hour, a day, until the zzz of this more animal, human,
Yeah, yeah.
legacy,
Some
right?
trigger, some
Yeah,
contracted, like, yeah, but why are you doing that? And it's going away or something, some
yeah, or
activation.
sense of being wronged by something, and now everything becomes very personal, and everything it's about me and my hurt, and my needs aren't met, I'm not seen, I'm not heard,
Yeah,
I feel abandoned, or I feel the helplessness, or it's never going to get better, whatever is the level to where we go, right? That human experience that seems to be shared by the millions, it's real as well. I mean, it may be an ultimate illusion, and we're all caught in this idea that we perceived as ourselves as separate, but ultimately we're all into this connected being. But in that way, when we are in those human places of separateness and pain and suffering, that feels very real. And oftentimes we make choices in our way of relating that stems from that place, right? Like from the human that is hurt, from the human that
yeah,
is afraid. And as you were saying, that goes back to that very child where those primal wounds were marked,
yes.
right?
Okay, let's bookmark this with the child a little bit. I don't want to lose it. But so what comes up for me as you say this is that it seems like we are fluctuating within our being. We are
Mm.
fluctuating from being resting in our true identity as universal presence, impersonal, so not being a man or a woman. So depending of the day or our level of baking, you know, like we are baking in the oven, depending how baked the cookie is, we are fluctuating from the true identity, and yet we have decades of operating from a separate mode of being me and uh, abandonment. Let's call it out. You know, this what comes up with all clients, all the time. Maybe it's too extreme, but it's like the pain of the wound of abandonment and the
Yeah,
wound of rejection.
yeah.
Basically,
Mhm.
something happens. There's a abandonment, rejection, and then if we remove the labels out of this abandonment, rejection, what is this? It is some somatic content, or, you know, not to get too technical, it's like some stirring in the belly or in the chest, and a sense of like That's like, and exactly. And the like absolute burning and distress sensation and melting and we put words like fear, despair, abandonment, rejection, alone. Yeah, alone in the whole world, alone. So all these feelings, sensations, they come usually, and then they might not even have thoughts, actually where thoughts come later and they say, oh, he doesn't love me and all that, but they're just coming like a cloud of pain somehow. And somehow this is very sticky. It's very sticky. Actually, I think it's the very advanced not to be hooked onto these attachment wounds of abandonment, rejection material. So this come up, and then our consciousness, our what we are, is getting identified with it, and then so our identity shifts into now this vulnerable, young, little me floating in the galaxy, in the gutter, abandoned, going to die. You know what I mean? So I guess we are fluctuating between knowing ourselves as God or presence and knowing ourselves as being
Miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that, that's real. Real meaning that, yeah, it feels very strong, and you can be in bed for weeks, and then you can even kill yourself. I mean, I get that, but it's not real. It's based on some. It's based on ignorance. Ignorance. I use it as my teacher uses it as the belief to be a limited, separate consciousness.
Yeah, and it's a very advanced thought. And you and I, we debated through the years around this conceptual real versus unreal, right? And is these days I'm considering what is ultimately real, right? But what is the meaning I give to the word real? It is felt.
This gets a whole other topic. What is real? I think
Right. And I don't want to go there, but I wanted to
real?
just like throw that in the background. But truly, ultimately, in those moments that we call, oh, this is such a real experience. I mean, even Buddha said pain is real. I mean, that is real pain.
Yeah.
It is felt. People, as you say, may commit even suicide for it,
Yeah.
And at the same time is the kind of pain that inspired centuries and centuries and centuries of poetry and music and literature and art. It is that, I think that pain, it's almost like our song to the universe sometimes,
Our moaning,
yeah,
whining song to the universe.
Yeah, and as far as this body, I mean, is real, we perceive ourselves as coming into this body and then growing and changing and eventually decaying and eventually dying. But as far as we are this body, as well as other levels of our existence, the programming is not only conceptual, right? It's not only belief systems that are conditioning. There's also like genetic material that is conditioning, ancestral legacies that are conditionings, and those primal imprintings that it's the blueprint, right, that we receive in those formative, if you wish, months, years of growing in our mother's belly, and then eventually being born, this experience of separation, and then first year or two of our lives where a lot of impressions are recorded.
Yeah. Well, this is such a juicy subject.
I'm glad that at the beginning we kind of like clarified that we're not here to seek solutions, because I mean, I think sometimes we may have tools to navigate these challenges, but the ultimate solutions is our extinction.
What? Our
Yeah.
extinction?
Yeah, in our human form, right? Like the way we understand it. Not extinction like as a race. I'm talking about the extinction of our identity as ego, separate self.
Yes, right. Okay. Okay. I resonate with that. Yeah. I had a few thoughts, but there were so many tangents. Yeah, so basically you are saying, among the things you said, that I mean there's something hardwired in the experience of having a human body, is that indeed if he leaves or she leaves, or you know the child is left alone, that is going to die and all that. So, and that's safer to, at least in the tribal or in the past, somehow it's more chances of survival if there is like a family unit or couple or something. So there's like millennia of information and fears and desires around that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I want to bring this topic here is like, yeah, a 7-year-old that is, a mother leaves, that's bad, and he may die in the gutter, yeah. But when my girlfriend leaves, I'm not a kid, and I'm not going to die in the gutter alone. However, it feels like that. And somehow it flushes out the whole sense of it can with people. I mean, I have people I work with, you know, it's like so intensely debilitating, and all the energy goes into trying to make it work to avoid losing this, and making compromise and going against oneself just to maintain this relationship, which is toxic, you know what I mean? Just because it seems like the ultimate evil to experience those sensations of what we call abandonment or rejection, you know. But it's yeah, it's not, we are not a kid now.
Correct. So that abandonment, right, and the rejection, there's a level there where we have the resistance, right?
Yeah.
The resistance of being abandoned and being rejected. I've reflected a lot in the past year, especially, as you well know, on this subject, and a little bit because I work with many people as yourself that have this experience over and over again, right? And oftentimes I'm actually going along with them and having that experience myself as I'm working with my clients. So at some point, this concept of the narcissistic wound came to me. So I don't know if you've noticed in your practice, but it seems...
Can you explain it a little more non-clinical, the narcissistic wound?
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot of more people, that there's some sort of like a rising wave of narcissistic relationships. You were talking about toxicity, right, in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And many clients, especially, I gotta say, statistically, women that come with this need to heal or process dynamics that are toxic in relationship with a person. They may have narcissistic traits. Mm-hmm. To a mild degree, as far as to the extent of the whole personality disorder, right? Narcissistic personality disorder. And so these stages of love, I noticed, from the love bombing to the devaluation and discarding, that usually are considered the stages in relationship with a narcissist. I noticed that truly are what happened in every relationship, like the love bombing, as you call it, the honeymoon. And then at some point, we all come to that place of devaluating what's happening, or the other person, or even ourselves. And eventually, oftentimes, we discard the whole person, the whole relationship. So I've noticed that we were talking about the romantic illusion, right? And the anatomy of the romantic illusion, this title that came through. I think that a very core part of that illusion has to do with this narcissistic wound that we all have. We don't need to be narcissist in the whole spectrum, you know, of the personality disorder, but we all have somehow narcissistic traits when we are attached and identified with our ego. And that abandonment and rejection is where the narcissistic wound is what hurts in the abandonment and rejection.
Yeah, it's like me abandoned.
Yeah,
me.
Right, me.
And we are not, it's not questioned that me in the gut, me in the chest, that is not the real me. It's not the real me, but it's
this persona that we have somehow developed, and given that many of us, there's a larger majority of humans that grew up in receiving a quite dysfunctional model of love. So we all somehow have developed tweaks in our personalities that are strategies, as you were saying, to maintain intact this idea of me as valuable and important, and you know, the self-importance that comes with that. But at the underneath that, right, like when you surrender into that wound and you go to a deeper level, there's something else that it's, I believe, real in the suffering that we experience often in a relationship that ends, or that is changing to a degree that there's a loss. And there's honest, genuine grief.
Okay. No, I can go with that. I mean, you know, Buddha said that's how it works here in this dimension. There is suffering, you know, old age, sickness, death, and loss. Everybody we love, their form is going to die, including ours. So there is this element of loss. And I feel, I mean, I don't know, but I imagine that even like a fully liberated sage, somehow his partner dies or lives with somebody else, goes to a vacation on a cruise with some other guy. I don't know, but I have a strong intuition that they will also feel some loss, some anger, maybe some loss, some sadness. So that's fine, but that's different than being hijacked in this identity of me being now alone in the whole universe. And then also usually what usually happens is that our existing deficiency story gets connected to it, like now me being alone in the universe, unloved, nobody loves me, and I'm what's wrong with me, or you know, that becomes a whole contracted identity that it's optional.
It is optional.
It's optional. It's not, you know, I used to be a student of the Fourth Way and the Gurdjieff Uspensky teachings, and Gurdjieff was saying there that there's real suffering and there's unnecessary imaginary suffering. And there's real suffering like old age, death, you know, financial stuff, all kind of real stuff. Loss, indeed. And then there's an imaginary suffering created through thinking and through identification and through a lot of juicing the me, you know. And the difference between them is that the real suffering lasts like a few minutes, you know, and the imaginary suffering is milked fresh juice of pain body. Thinking about it, you can have for decades, you know.
Totally. I mean, the real suffering that you're naming may last a few minutes in the moment, right? Like in the experience,
A
but
few minutes or
it's
a few
waves.
weeks in a relationship
Yeah.
ending, maybe, but it doesn't need to be devastating.
No, and then it doesn't need to debilitate your whole life. And
Yeah, it just sucks. Yeah, I mean, if it were good. Also, you know what? It's interesting. I keep quoting my teacher, but he says, you know, somebody leaves, it means that he wasn't happy. So if one person wasn't happy, it's very likely that everybody wasn't happy. You know, we're just not aware of it. So good riddance. You know, it's it's good.
conceptually, I totally agree with you. And
Yeah.
this part of the unnecessary suffering. So I wonder how come, given that unnecessary suffering, it's way more debilitating than just the suffering that we may have to process, you know, a different
Yes.
time, and open ourselves to, just like we open ourselves to a rainy day versus a sunny day. And the more we resist that, we go into the unnecessary suffering. Well,
Yeah.
we most often, all of us, even the most, you know, developed, maybe not your teachers, but you know, people that are quite advanced and skillful, even in their emotional competency,
Mm-hmm.
may still go into that suffering
Mm-hmm.
that is unnecessary, as you're naming it. I don't know if it's unnecessary. I don't know, but
Meaning
it
that
happens.
is self-created, basically
It's not.
self-created and imaginary, meaning that if one was not established and identified with the imaginary me, that wouldn't be happening so long. It will just be some battery acid going through the system that is being witnessed, but there's no sticking agent to, oh my God, like me in the sensation. It's me in the belly, me as being identified with the content of the experience. But no,
Yes,
I mean, I get it. I was in the gutter a few days ago. I mean, you know, I mean,
I know. I know very well. Yeah. You know, last night I was I was listening to a podcast with Gabor Mate when
yeah, I
he
listened to it
described it.
after that too a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, and I appreciated something he said. You know, I found that made me appreciate his words, because he was talking about healing and what's healing, and he was talking about this concept of emotional competency, right? Like, of which he described in some way as our capacity to open up to challenging emotions without projecting or reacting from those emotions, right?
yeah,
But he was also saying that at 74, and he's a expert in the field of healing and addiction and compassion,
and
connection,
trauma.
spirit.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, so 74, a person that has dedicated their whole life to healing, he was saying that still from time to time that wound of attachment and abandonment kicks
Yeah,
in very strong in his
yeah,
relationship with his
yeah.
wife.
I remember, and he said that he's very aware that it started that during the
The
you
war.
know, Nazi occupied
Yeah.
Budapest,
Mm-hmm.
his mother had to give him to a
Leave it.
stranger, uh,
Yeah.
and for his own good and out of ultimate love. But the baby Gabor Mate didn't get that. It was just the tearing of the separation, and for the baby, you know, that there's no concept for the baby, there's no cognitive, but just separation from the mother is so ultimately excruciating. You know, this that's it, somehow that's here the attachment wound. We can sew it into the discussion. Basically, that those few minutes or a few hours that baby Gabor experienced these devastating sensations somehow created some contracted, some imprints in this, in the presence that was experiencing through Gabor Mate's body, you know, and then they get stored there, you know, they get stored there, and then there's a deep sensitivity whenever anything like that comes close, you know, gets activated. And yeah, it was really sweet that he was honest and shared that it takes time, and he still has activation of attachment wound basically after 73 years later.
Yeah. And you know, as you were speaking, what this one thing came to my mind, that my grandma, she used to say every time she had had some injuries in her body through the years of her life, and every time that a storm was about to come, or the weather was changing, right, and maybe it was going to rain soon, my grandma used to say that those scars, those old once broken bones, were hurting more, right?
Yeah.
I remember she would say every time some rain was about to come, how her scars, places where she had surgeries, were hurting more. And it's not the only person I've heard saying that. And it's like there's a changing pressure, maybe, I thought at some point in my life. And that change of pressure, the body still carries the memory.
Yeah.
And when the pressure changes, those sensations are real in the body.
Yeah.
So we may heal from wounds and still get a reminder of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the pressure changes.
Yeah, here's something to say for future discussions if we do, but this whole topic of attachment wound and these attachment styles, like anxious attachment and avoidant and secure attachment, and how they actually play out so much in relationships. And actually, you know, I read the book once that is called it now, the creator of this theory, attachment theory, he initially called it the love theory, but he was in the psychological field and his peers told him, man, you can't call it like that. It's too syrupy. You need to get more clinical. So he called it the attachment theory and attachment wounds, but it was all about love. So
is that book we were talking about, Attached?
It's not. It's somebody else. But that's a great resource. This book called Attached. I forgot by whom. We can probably put it into the writing. You know, one thing I wanted to say, and I think we are kind of running out of our self-appointed slot. And I think it's a good direction to explore in the future. So illusions about this and obstacles to having through more conscious relating, which is not based on all that program, and it can be actually good. So one obstacle is if people haven't done some serious work around their abandonment or rejection or whatever their attachment wounds that happen in childhood, if those are not somehow processed to some degree, not just in talk therapy, but somatically in the body, then those will right away come out in any closeness, you know, and it's going to sabotage the ship. And so the more people have, it seems like the more the couple, both of are into honest, non-bullshit spiritual work, and also they engaged in some honest psychosomatic processing of the subconscious, somehow it increases the chances for something good to happen, you know. And another idea is also from my teacher. He was saying that, he said this, when I was in the gutter, or I call it in the washing machine, you know, like you're spinning into. he said, you know, the prerequisite for any good relationship, and actually the prerequisite for life, is to have already found the source of peace, inner contentment and stability within, you know? So that's a prerequisite for having a good relationship. I think that's a good, something worth saying here.
It is worth saying it.
Yeah.
And it is also worth adding that that is not a destination, but it's a constant process, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes, especially when I work with people that have high standards with themselves, perfectionists, or people
Yeah.
that are, you know, really invested in being the right version of themselves, or doing good, or be functional, right? Sometimes I have to remind, because I'm one of them, but I have to remind myself and others that that a sense of contentment and peace, as you're talking about, and fulfillment, many people are lucky to be there naturally, and for many people that is a process that is non-linear. It is it comes in stages, and it comes in cycles, and it may be, you know, that you expand your capacity to be in that place of peace and sustainable fulfillment. And at the same time, you know, life happens, and the your boat gets rocked by this and that. I mean, we're going through a pandemic right now, and all kinds of things um, come to test that place.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally resonate with you that I mean, I actually am a little bit going further, that piece of feeling inner stability and inner contentment and being at home within oneself, actually that doesn't happen mechanically. That doesn't happen, you know, just like that. My understanding is that this is a result of some serious process of sorts, some type of becoming much more conscious, releasing subconscious limitations. So it's earned somehow, you know. But you know, I do, people who were lucky that they had in childhood, like very wise parents, loving, wise parents. You know, apparently what the child needs is to be seen and felt and
Mm-hmm.
attuned, you know. So I think some of us may have been lucky to be raised by very wise uh, people, and then we develop secure attachment, you know. So that makes it easier somehow. It seems like we have less the turmoil, and so there are more chances for the relationship to happen. That's
And
what I hear.
yeah, so there's lots of threads that we could pick from this
Yeah,
conversation. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Maybe I can live with this, you know, for because I asked once my teacher, like, okay, but how can we distinguish between the impulse to seek relationship from a sense of lack, so from the separate imaginary me, you know, how can I distinguish between the impulse of seeking a relationship from a sense of lack and to the natural universal impulse to find a mate and to experience life with a partner, you know. And also there's this, maybe I had some Buddhist distortions that, you know, a serious spiritual aspirant doesn't need anybody, and actually that's an obstacle to your awakening. And so it's a distortions, I believe. And he said these things, you know, basically, I'm not exactly sure what he said, but he's like, it's a difference, you know, because if you're not coming from the place of lack, so that's attended to the best one can. it is actually natural to want to have someone to love and to protect, and to have a family, and to, but it comes from rather from a place of wanting fulfillment, comes from a place of already being full, and then this is more like enhancing the celebration of life, you know. So it's the partnership is a celebratory rather than the placebo of it's going to fix my my misery, you know.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very beautiful ideal. But as far as I can tell you, my experience so far is that relationships have just been the field for that, you know, growth in consciousness and awareness. Not quite yet a celebratory place, but certainly a
Yeah,
school or boot camp
yeah,
at times.
yeah,
And I am actually very grateful because, as we were saying, those wounds in attachment, they are relational wounds.
yeah,
And we may come to this illusion, I would say another illusion, especially when we're single and we spend a lot of time on our own, that we came to heal those relational
yeah,
wounds by ourselves because we don't have any
yes,
triggers. And then actually we return to relationship and we are not so healed. They're still
yes,
there to maybe a
yes,
new level, you know. They may offer you a new advanced course
yeah,
in the anatomy of romance and love.
yes. I see this with many clients actually. There are some you know, women that are very independent, very solid, functioning very well, and doing well by themselves in life and
Mhm.
thriving. And
Yeah,
then as they get into a relationship, then it's all other aspects come, you know, really young aspects, and you know, and I yeah, there's this I guess slogan in the field like relational wounds heal relationally. So whatever missing experience we had, you know, basically the wound is connected to in childhood we needed something and we didn't get that, or
mhm.
we got something that we didn't need, you know, and then there's something disrupted in the system, and then we are longing to make that whole, you know. So this can, relational wounds like that, they can't heal on the cushion, they say, or meditating all day long and all that. So they heal in a relationship, either with finally having a good relationship later, or in a relationship with a teacher or a therapist, or in a relationship by being a mother later somehow, in giving to the child what we didn't have, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we can, I know that we have to end this dialogue at some
Right.
point, but maybe
Yes.
we can say that among the illusions of this romantic illusion, one aspect is to believe that a relationship arrives on our plate and it's perfect all the time,
Yeah.
forever blissful, and
Yeah.
all those things that we were addressing, right? And that
Yeah.
actually it is a work in progress, like many things. And ideally, when two partners are equally conscious and equally addressing their own development physically, spiritually, mentally, and equally intentional in opening themselves to a place where it's safe and vulnerable, where that healing can happen naturally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Ideally, that's the place,
Yeah.
probably more than this idea of a perfect one that is out
Yeah.
there, that one day destiny will reunite us.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's what
Yeah. And
comes
I,
up.
I resonate with you, like actually the relationships and all this misery and suffering and turmoil was actually great training, and it is still a great training, growthful, it's a great opportunity for growth if people are aware of this, you know. It's a great opportunity to clear out subconscious sense of limitation, subconscious, all kind of stuff that are there that only an intimate, deep relationship can evoke it to the light of awareness. So it's part of the path, basically. It's the path.
Yeah.
You know? And as we progress on the path, our relationships will get better. That's what I feel. I can see that. Yeah.
I want to believe in that illusion, Mihai.
Yeah.
And as you were talking earlier about this path, right? Like this or distortion around the fact that to be on a spiritual path, you got to be a sort of a monk, right? Not in need of a relationship with another human being at that level of sexuality or romance or all those things. And yeah, that's not the only type of spiritual path, you know.
Yeah.
The ascetic path, the path of the monk, is one, and seems like this kind of relationship, it's more in alignment with other kinds of spiritual understanding. Buddhism.
In modern times, I think this monk path, which involved renunciation, was kind of prevalent in the history, in the past. Anybody who really wanted reach God or enlightenment kind of needed to withdraw from the world and all that, with some few exceptions like Sufi, fourth way, tantric. But now things have changed a lot, so now it's actually much more prevalent, being the path of the householder, you know, the not rejection of the world, but embracing it, you know. Well, maybe we can kind of put an end to this. We definitely kept our word, so we didn't come up with some final solution.
And we kept our words that we were going to go with the flow without a script, as we did.
No script. And so perhaps we'll continue, and I hope that this was enjoyable, first of all.
It was
perhaps fun. It also for our audience, you know, they took the time to watch this. Hopefully it was enjoyable, inspirational, and maybe shook some you know, conditioning that we may have there that is taken as true, you know, some crusts.
Maybe it would be appropriate to ask the audience if they have any specific question on this chapter 1, anatomy of the illusion.
Oh, you're right. So people can ask questions or make comments on the wherever there's a section there, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe if there's any juicy questions, we can pick it up in a second time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you, Amata, for joining me, and thank you, everybody, for your attention. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao for now.